Hi, Black Acid Lizard. That was an excellent question you have. You ask if a product or service should be provided at the barrel of a gun. And my answer is I think there are cases where they shouldn't and cases where they should. Now, for me, whether something should or shouldn't be done is simply whether it's in my self-interest that they be done. For most goods or services, I think they're most abundant and most available to me if they're supplied in a free market. For example, I can go get bread or food anytime I want at the grocery store. These are provided in a generally free market. I don't see any reason why they should be supplied at the barrel of a gun, as you put it. But there are other things that I think should be provided at the barrel of a gun. Namely, the supply of the protection of individual liberty and property. In other words, I think extortion is in order. And unlike some people who won't admit that taxation is extortion or theft, I admit that it is. But I still support it as a necessary evil. Now, why do I think it's a necessary evil? Is there anyone who would disagree that extortion is an extremely profitable enterprise? How could states amass such resources, such tremendous wealth, tremendously costly weapons, if there were no taxation? If people were free to voluntarily fund the provision of national defense, I don't think enough people would contribute. And the main reason people wouldn't contribute is the free rider problem. Now, the free rider problem comes up in the case of what are called public goods. Public goods are goods or services that are non-excludable. This means that if someone purchases them, others are able to consume them as well without having to pay for them. There's no way to restrict these people from getting the service as well. And national defense is a public good because if you were able to escape taxation, if somehow you were able to hide your income from the government, you would still be able to enjoy the service of national defense or of someone protecting you from foreign invasion. So, in the case where people can receive a service without having to pay for it, I think most people will sit back and wait for others to pay for the service. And those who would otherwise be willing to pay for the service won't, because they're offended of the idea of someone else living off of what they paid for without their consent. And they would know other people would be thinking of the same thing, and they would know it wouldn't raise adequate funds to pay for the service. So I think this is just natural human behavior. For example, if the roads were available for anyone to drive on, knowing that others would be using the roads without contributing to its maintenance, people wouldn't contribute to its maintenance. The roads would crumble. Now, the way to stop it would be either to take over the roads and set toll booths at entrance points, or find some other way to tax the drivers, such as through a gasoline tax. In other words, you would either have to tax people or convert the public good into a private, excludable good. Now, the problem with national defense, there's no way that I can see to turn it into a private good, to restrict the enjoyment of the service to only those that pay for it, and at the same time to raise enough money to build an adequate defense, to build a strong defense. So I think in the same way that the road would crumble, so would national defense. I would voluntarily pay for national defense if it were an excludable good, but I'm very hesitant to do so, knowing that others would be free riding off of my contributions, and believing that because of the free rider problem, there wouldn't be enough funds available for a strong defense. Now, the only condition where it would be fine for national defense to be very weak is when other nations also have weak offensive military capabilities. And they would if they relied only on voluntary contributions. But they don't, and that's the catch. They force people to contribute, which enables them to create a much more powerful military and weapon systems than they could otherwise procure. If we decide to rely on voluntary contributions, we would be overrun by others who have stronger offensive force because they tax. So it's because that other people extort that necessitates that we extort as well. I think taxation to provide national defense is a necessary evil. Because others are evil, we must be evil too, so to speak. It's just a condition that nature puts us in if we are to ensure our own survival and freedom. Now, some other people may argue that taxation is immoral because it's initiation of force, which it is. But if taxation is immoral, then what good is morality if it results in your own destruction? I think that would be a perverse morality. If a morality is to be rational, its aim ought to be based in self-interest. What's moral to me is that which allows me to maximize my life and liberty. If taxation is necessary for that, then it's good, not evil. Or if I'm wrong and it actually is evil, if taxation, initiation of force is evil, then I still support it as a necessary evil. I don't see any value in sacrificing my life and liberty for the sake of moral purity. I don't see the point. Now, if anyone could find a feasible way to make national defense a private, excludable good, and assure me that the funds raised could be adequate to defend against an invading force that obtains its wealth through massive extortion, that it wouldn't be just a waste of money for me, then I would oppose the provision of national defense at the barrel of a gun. But even then, only in a theoretical sense, because the system would just be theoretical. It would have to be set up as an alternative for me to actively support it. So until such a theoretical system is in place, even if it's possible to theorize it, I still have to support taxation to supply national defense. National defense should be provided at the end of the barrel of a gun.